So here we are, and we're moving in a new direction. You know, as humanity, we're moving in a new direction. You say, I don't see a new direction. Oh, yes you do. Yes you do. What did Will Smith say? He says, there is no more racism than there used to be. There's just more videotape. You know, there's no more of the stuff that we get worried about out there. It's just brought out into the open. You know, every valley shall be filled in, every mountain shall be removed. Everything is being moved to a new place. I can't say enough about this. This is a great time. You say, oh, it's a hard time, but what a privilege it is that you live in this time. What a joy it is that you're here to see the lid come off and everything come up and the healing taking place in the consciousness. You say, I don't see the healing. The very thing that you're concerned about is the healing. The very thing I'm concerned about is the healing. Together? The very thing I'm concerned about is the healing. I let go into love. Together? I let go into love. There's only one lesson to ever learn. The curriculum of life is a curriculum of learning how to love. Every page is just another lesson on love. And sometimes that learning how to love is difficult and traumatic, like the crucifixion was. And that was an expression of love. Sometimes it's filled with joy, like the resurrection was. Sometimes it's filled with sadness, like when Jesus said to Judas, go do what you've got to do and do it quickly. Sometimes it's filled with fieriness. That's turning over the money changers' temples and saying, you know, you've made this a den of robbers. You know, sometimes it's filled with such heartfelt compassion, like when he forgave the woman who was caught in adultery and everybody wanted to punish her, and he just don't throw stones. So you think, so one of my disadvantages in being up here is that I want to share some principles that are universal about how to love, how to do the thing that we're all here to do. But in your case, you're supposed to stand up for yourself and be firm. And in your case, you're supposed to let go and surrender. Or in your case, on Tuesday you're supposed to let go and surrender, and on Wednesday you're supposed to be firm. Or maybe it's 7 o'clock on Thursday, and then at 8 o'clock it's the opposite. Because, so you say, how do I know? Well, you can't fill a full cup. You know, we have ideas of what we think that answered prayer is, the highest good is. But you can't ever know what the will of God is, what the highest good is, until you let go into it, and you've got to release something. If your hands are like this, you can't put anything into it. If your cup is filled, you can't pour anything into it. So how do? You've got to let go into love. You've got to release and let go. I detach, I disengage, and I disentangle. Together? I detach, I disengage, and I disentangle. I was sitting in Unity Village's Peace Chapel for Silent Unity. And in the Peace Chapel, my dad he loved it so much that he had me scatter his ashes right outside the Peace Chapel illegally. But I did it. And I was sitting there in the Peace Chapel, and I was going through about 30 years ago something, and it was a log jam. Have you ever been in a log jam? A log jam is where everything's all jammed up, and you can't see any way out, and nothing seems to be moving. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And my dad worked in a lumber with the lumberjacks during the summers when he was in college as a cook, and he talked about the log jams, and they would get jammed up on the river, and the oldest and wisest lumberjack would be chosen to free up the log jam. I think probably because they were the oldest, they could lose them, right? So it was rough, but they were the wisest. They knew, they looked, and they could see which was the key log. What's the key log? What's your key log? What's your key log? Well, I didn't know what it was, and I had that picture, and my dad told me. I just, well, what's my key log? I asked, and I got the words detach, disengage, and disentangle. I detach, I disengage, and I disentangle. Together? I detach, I disengage, and I disentangle. You know, my dad told me that when that lumberjack got out there and pulled out that log, pulled out that key log, all of a sudden that lumberjack had to get out of there in a hurry because everything freed up. And sometimes you got to move pretty fast. You know, things get jammed up. But when Spirit moves. And you're ready to let go of your key log. You're ready to let go of your comfort zone, of your need for attention, for your need for being a victim, or your need, in my case, to obsessively control. What is worry? It's the obsessive need to control. It's the false belief that if I just think about this a little bit more, I can make it better. It's thinking of, so you think about it, and you think about it, and you think about it. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I'm going to figure this out. But it's no. You've got to empty your cup in order for it to be filled. You've got to let go and move into a consciousness that is receptive. You can't put anything into closed hands. You can't fill a full cup. You've got to detach, disengage, and disentangle, and let go of everything that you've been holding on to. All those figuring it out. You know, Jesus said such a beautiful thing. He says, I'm telling you, don't worry. Don't take thought, needless, obsessive thought, about what you're going to eat or drink or clothe your body with. Your soul is more important than food, and isn't your body more important than clothing? Look up at the birds in the sky. They don't plant, they don't harvest, they don't fill silos, yet God still feeds them. Don't you make more difference to God than they do? Can any of you, by taking obsessive thought, add a foot to your height? How about your clothing? Look at how the lilies of the field grow. They don't work it. They don't spin cloth. But I'm telling you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of them. And if that's how God clothes the wild grass of the field here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, won't He do so much more for you, oh you of little faith? So don't worry about, what do I drink? Or what do I wear? The superstitious people ask about these things, but God knows you need all these things. So ask first for the kingdom of God, and that justice, and the other things will be delivered to you. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't obsess about it. Tomorrow, let tomorrow worry about itself. Each day's trouble is enough for that day. So, I let go. I let go. Detach, disengage, and disentangle. And I thought, okay, what is it? And I looked over to my left there in the Peace Chapel, and there was a sheet of paper somebody had written in beautiful handwritten calligraphy saying, the battle is not yours. They made a sign for me. I took that sign with me back, and I followed that. The battle was not mine. And the log jammed, and I boom, 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 boom. And one of the things was I ended up trying out in this church in 1987. That was that time. I ended up going to Palo Alto, and I got to be with my grandmother as she was dying, and it was an incredible situation. But I didn't have to fix it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to fix what's on television tonight. You don't have to fix anything. You say, but it's important. Have you ever added an inch to your height by obsessively worrying? It doesn't make any difference. What makes it? You say, but what's mine to do? You'll never know what's yours to do until you let go of what you think is yours to do. Let go of what you have in your mind. That you say, this is a balance point now. You need to be intentional, and then you can let go into love. You can let go into love. What came to me in that Peace Chapel was that the only lesson in life was love. And that situation was teaching me how to love. And in that situation, the love was showing up as being surrendered. Being surrendered. Jane Elizabeth Hart gave me a sign once, in another time, when I was obsessing about things. And she gave me a sign, and she said, am I surrendering here? She said, put this next to your phone. Because people would call up and I'd obsess about whatever. Am I surrendering here? Now you say surrender, that's weak. No, surrender is the ultimate strength. Surrender is the strongest thing you can do. Surrender and letting go into love is the greatest power, because then you're open to receive that information that you need to receive and take the action that you need to take, which isn't the thing that you wanted. Love surprised me. Divine love surprised me. It's not what I thought. And then I end up taking an action. If you've ever done that, you take an action and what was that? Who was that? What were those words coming out of my mouth? What was this action? And sometimes it's troubling. Sometimes it's, why was I so strong with this? Or other times it's like, why did I just walk away from that situation when it didn't seem to be, I should have done something about it. And so, what about you? Where in your life do you need to loose it and let it go? You know, when I was in college going out with a woman who I broke up with her, and she ended up going out with a guy who was involved in criminal activity, and I was so worried about this. She wasn't involved in it, but I guess she was trying to let out her inner bad girl. So anyway, she was going through whatever that was, and I got obsessive. I got so worried. I got so worried. I went to my minister. I said, I'm worried about this. I'm obsessing about it. And she said, here's your affirmation. I release you to your higher power and your higher power's guidance. And then I release myself to my higher power and my higher power's guidance. I release you to your higher power. See, and then I'm not her higher power. And you know, because I knew, and this wasn't obsession, I knew something was going to happen. I just knew. And sure enough, it happened. But it happened in such a beautiful way. She was protected. She learned her lesson and never did that again. So, but maybe she wouldn't have. I don't know. I mean, sometimes people need to learn things. So I'm trying to tell you that loose it, let it go. I release you to your higher power and your higher power's guidance. I release you to the God of your being and that God's guidance. And then I release myself, and then I know what to do, which is usually a heck of a lot less than I think I'm supposed to do. Sometimes. But sometimes there's some action to take. And sometimes letting go into love confounds our positions. I remember James Philip Freeman telling me the biggest problem in this world today is isms and is ideals. You say, ideals are good. No, when you lock down in an ideal about something and you forget about love and you forget about people and you're closed off. And I really reflected on it. I had a situation once where I had a next door neighbor. I was living above my dad's hardware store, and the front apartment was on a very busy boulevard in Oakland. And he couldn't rent it because nobody wanted to have an apartment that had that much noise. Finally, a guy came in who looked really beaten up, and my dad rented. I thought, he'll never rent it to this guy. And he did. I said, Dad, this guy. He said, I know, but I need the rent. Well, every night, I had the next apartment over. Every night, I'd hear his delirium tremens, his DTs. He'd go through, and he was an alcoholic, and he had no people in his life, I found out, talking to him. He had no one. He was estranged from everyone, and he was basically drinking himself to death. And one night, I kept hearing hammering, and it was 2 a.m. I went over, I knocked on his door, and he barely could get the door open, and I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to crack a crab. And somebody in a bar had given him a frozen crab. It was frozen solid, and he was trying to hit it with a hammer. I said, you can't, it's not gonna, it's solid, it's frozen. Oh, okay, and so I went back to my apartment, and there he starts hammering on it again because he'd forgotten. So I finally said, what do I do? What do I do? And what came to me was, and this is challenging because it sounds a little codependent, but it was my guidance. It was, you got to sit with him for 1 hour a week. You got to, one night a week, even if he's passed out, you got to sit with him. It just came to me. Got to sit with him. So I told him I was gonna, can I come over sometimes? Yeah, sure. Can I let myself in? Sure. And sometimes he would be relatively sober. We could talk. Sometimes he'd be out of it. Sometimes he'd be passed out. And I would sit there for an hour. He never had the crying out of the DTs again. I wish I could say that he got sober or whatever. He didn't. And he died maybe a year later. But I'm telling you this because sometimes love, letting go into love, tells you to back away and to move into another space and let the person go. Other times you sit with them and you sit with them. You just sit present with them. Because somebody was present with him. That's what his soul needed. You say, but it didn't work. Souls are eternal. And we have many chances. Infinite opportunities. Infinite intelligence gives us... Infinite intelligence gives me infinite opportunities. Together? Infinite intelligence gives me infinite opportunities. And so that infinite intelligence will give you that infinite opportunity that you need. But you got to be willing to let go of your idea, because that was not my idea. That's the last thing I wanted to do. And yet it was what was needed. You know, there was a friend of mine who had two teenage daughters, and they both kind of were getting into trouble. And he'd sit and he'd say his affirmations and do his prayers and tell God all the things that protect this and do this and do this. And he realized that his prayers were obsessive. Have you ever had obsessive prayers? Jesus said they think those superstitious people think that by their many words they can get God to listen to them more where it's that obsessive prayer idea. So he was doing it, and finally he realized, no, what came to him, and it came to him in a moment of just letting go. He saw hands, like good hands with Allstate. And he saw himself putting his 2 daughters in the hands, and then the hands just taking them away. And it was like, put him in the protective hands of God. And he says, I was running their lives. I was running interference for them. This is the opposite of what happened with me and this guy next door. This is like letting it go. And then he says, then he knew what to say. He knew what to do. He knew when to hold them, when to fold them. How to work through this situation. And he says, I stopped running their lives. Often, in order to get to that point where you're open to that divine guidance, you're open to that new possibility, that divine idea, that revelation that comes from divine love, you've got to take a mental breath. And there's a wonderful poem. It's my favorite poem in Unity. It's by Lowell Fillmore, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore's son. It's called The Answer. When for a purpose I prayed and I prayed and I prayed until my words seemed worn and bare with arduous use, and I knocked and asked and knocked and asked again, and all my fervor and persistence brought no hope. I paused to give my weary brain a rest, and ceased my anxious human cry. In that still moment, after self had tried and failed, there came a glorious vision of God's power, and lo, my prayer was answered in that hour. It's making a conscious break. You see, but I have feelings, I've got emotions. What do you do with your feelings when you're going through something like this? Well, you don't try to stuff them, you don't try to block them, you release them. That's why journaling is so good. Write out all the ugly stuff you can and then burn it. Get that stuff out. You might talk to a trusted friend. I don't mean somebody who'll wallow with you, but somebody that work with somebody who's professional or go to a meeting, but get this stuff out. The word emotion comes from the Latin ex movere, which means moving it out. That's why emotions are here. They're healing. Not if you wallow in them, they can be destructive. But ex movere, move them out. Move them out. Move out those emotions. And detach, that comes from roots that mean untapped. So you're letting go of your emotions. You're not getting caught up in it. You're not getting all involved in it. You know, when I was going through something, again, another one of my obsessive things, and I asked what I should do, and I got, keep your fingerprints off of it. Keep your fingerprints off of it. And I saw myself coming up out of a swamp with the mud, in the swamp, and it all came off me like Teflon, and I came up in the sunlight. And as long as I remembered to keep my fingerprints off of it, it worked out great. Boy, the minute I picked it up, I was in trouble. What came to me was, if it comes into your face, if it comes into your space, address it. But if it doesn't, don't go running after it trying to explain to everybody. And that's coming out of that defensive posture. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's a surrendered, what it is active engagement, surrendered engagement. It's Tuesday night, I'm really going to talk about this in my class. It's about being fully engaged and yet fully surrendered. Detached, but fully engaged. And how to do the dance between the two. And how do you do the dance between the two? We've got to lift up out of that stuck place, that place where you are obsessing about things. I've talked to you before about walking around the block, taking the dog for a walk, doing some exercises, getting something to get yourself up and out. There's that wonderful spiritual thermometer, and I'm always talking about this, but it's so simple. And yet, it's something we have to exercise our will to do. Loving, we don't often realize it. Love is an exercise of will. You have to will to love. And you have to will to lift up out of these things. And so take this, put it up on your mirror or something. It's you can get a copy of it outside of fellowship. And ask yourself, where am I now? Oh, I'm at a 2. Oh my gosh, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10. And then say, where would I like to be? I'd like to be at a 7. And feel yourself lifting up, lifting up, lifting up. And you say, well, that's just my imagination, but that's all you've got. In this whole world, that's all you've got. The Sunday school kids are learning about imagination. We're going to learn about that a little bit when they come in. But what is that? You say, I don't know how to meditate, but anytime you use your imagination, you're meditating. Anytime you imagine, there's another way of looking at this. I can lift up out of this. And you just say, what would it feel like if I was at an 8? How would that feel? How would I look at things? What would my heart tell me to do? Sometimes just moving into your heart, putting your hand on your heart. Just letting go into your heart. Breathing in and out of your heart. You know, Stretton Smith talked about a time when a man came into their church bookstore in the church he was serving and started railing on everybody and calling down the wrath of God on all these heathens, you know, and all this stuff. And the man obviously had a mental problem. And he said, I wanted to walk the other way, and what came to me was no. And he said, I said, what is needed here? And he said, I went into my heart and I asked, what is needed? And I walked up to him and I said, do you love Jesus? And the man said, well, of course I love Jesus. He said, would you pray with me? Said, yes, of course I'll pray with you. Put your hand on your heart and just say, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And the man softened and he let go and he thanked him and he walked out. You know, this is powerful. But move into your heart. What is it that is needed in this moment? Your heart knows. Your heart knows. Your heart knows. Your heart knows. It means that you've got to let go. I had a community minister friend of mine who was a high school football player. He was 6'6". He's a big guy. And he went on a whitewater rafting trip. And the guy who was the guide had been a Youth of Unity member, just coincidentally. Later, he said to him, if you had died, my mom would have killed me because if I killed a Unity minister, you know. So what happened was, the guy told him, if you get thrown from your raft, don't fight against the current. Let go and you'll pop up. But he's a big guy. He got thrown. He's fighting against it and fighting against it. He said, I've been working in my ministry on the concept of let go and let God. And to me, it was just a platitude. It was just nice words, goody-goody words. Let go and let God. He says, but all of a sudden I realized it's life or death. Because he was getting to the last breath. Let go and let God was going to save my life if I was willing to do it. So he said, I just let go and I stopped fighting the current. Stop fighting the current. And then he popped up and he was fine. He said, that night I just laid in bed. I've never been so grateful for being alive. He learned that lesson of letting go. It was very graphic. And isn't it interesting that that's what he'd been working on in his ministry? Letting go. But what is letting go? Letting go is letting God. And it doesn't mean that you're passive. Sometimes you're surrendered. But it doesn't mean you're passive. It means that you're engaged in such a way that you are willing to take the steps that are yours to take, but not take them for anybody else. And you look at the world around you as the play, the active play of God, where everyone else is evolving just like you. That person that you have a hard time with on TV, or whether your relative or whoever the thing is, that's just you at a different level of your own soul's evolution, somewhere in your distant past, maybe before your own conscious memory. And you can have compassion on them. You don't enable them. You don't approve of it, but you just know that everyone's on their path. We're all on that path. You're on your spirit-guided path, and you're ready to take your next spiritual step. And the only way that you're going to take your next spiritual step is to let go and let God. But you've got to let go of your idea of what the world calls good. Paul said, don't conform any longer to the patterns of this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your own mind. Then you'll be able to know and follow what God's will is. That good, pleasing, and perfect will. So you won't even know what is yours to do until you let go and allow of what the world is telling you, what everybody else is doing, all that stuff out there. And then, okay, what's my own soul need to do? What your soul is calling you to do is to be an opening for love. To be an opening for divine love. To let divine love flow through you. To let divine love move through you. There's a woman who was in a church of mine, and she was in perfect health. She was a good friend. She was a prayer partner of mine, very, very close. And then about a year after I left, she came down with cancer, and she was in the very last stages. They told her, you're going to have to go into hospice. There is no hope. You're going to have to do this. And she wrote me this letter after all of this took place. She said, I was sitting out on my deck that day. I was aware of human suffering, and I thought, I don't even want to fight my way back. It's just too painful out there. And then a thought popped into my head. You don't need to do anything. You just need to be an entry point for love, that's all. So I realized, sitting there wrapped in my blankets, breathing, I didn't have to do anything more than just be open to love and let it pour through me. And who knows, maybe it'd have ripple effects across the world. There are spiritual traditions that say a butterfly's wings on this continent will affect the weather in China. Certainly, if I align myself with that love, I can make a difference. And starting then, I started to get better. I reached a point where I said to my oncologist, I'm letting go of chemotherapy. The timing was perfect. Just then we discovered a clinical trial using monoclonal antibodies that was just beginning. And for the next 16 months, I improved, I got stronger. I've come back to nearly total health. I've done scuba diving with dolphins, and I've climbed the Grand Teton Mountain with my son and husband. She moved with it because she became an opening for divine love. I'm going to be an opening for divine love. Love is that healing power. Love is that strength. Love is that light. Love is guiding you right now. Love is telling you what to do. Love is moving you out of your complacency. You are a conscious agent of love. And sometimes it's just sitting with someone, like I said with my neighbor. Sometimes it's letting go and moving on. Sometimes it's acting. Sometimes it's releasing. But we're going to do this right now. We're going to do this work of love. And it's two parts. We detach, we disengage, we disentangle, and then we let go in love. So close your eyes, open your heart, and just take this as your truth. I detach into divine love. I disengage from whatever's out there. I disentangle my thoughts. I stop obsessing and trying to control it with my thoughts. And I let go into love. I take a moment to become aware of my heart space. I feel that good heart of mine, that courageous heart, that heart of courage that is strong enough to get me through anything. I open up in love. I'm open to divine ideas. I'm open to a revelation. I'm open to being guided. I'm open to having the key log, the logjam released. And I just sit in a moment of surrender and affirm, I am open. I am open in love. I am open in love. I open up. I open up in divine love. Thank you, God. So it is. It's such a great time to open up a space. Open up a space in your heart. Open up a space in your mind, and especially in your hands. So let go of everything that's in your hands. Whatever it is you think you need to do, move inward. Let go. And so, just with your whole being, say, I let go my mind. I let go my heart. I let go my hands. And I move into this safe space of this now moment where all my prayers are already answered. All my needs are already met. Oh, I just imagine that I'm taking my fingerprints off of all the concerns, the worries. I'm detaching from everything that I've been holding on to. Somebody once said that worry is just thinking that our thinking is going to make things better. So we obsess about something. So we let go of that. We disengage. We turn within and we let go of the outer world. We disentangle from all the thoughts, all the drama, all the pictures. It takes an act of will to do this. So I will to will the will of love. I move within. And I let go into love. let go into love. Feel yourself dropping down into your heart. I let go into love. Feel your open fingers representing the open-handed, open-hearted letting go into love. Letting all your thoughts just sift through your fingers. And let your heart become full of peace. Your open hands remind you that your mind is quiet. Your heart is full of joy. These open hands remind you that your heart is full of love. In this now moment, I detach, I let go into love. To the people, to the circumstances in the world, to my life's events, I say, I loose you and I let you go. I let go into love. I fully and freely release you. I release you into love. All that has happened is complete in divine love. In divine love, my highest good works out. So does everyone else's. In divine love, I release everyone to their higher power and their indwelling guidance. I release myself to my higher power, God in me. And I affirm that I am not that higher power for anyone else. So I let go into love. I release into love. And now I lift up, lift up. I have let go so I can lift up into a place where I feel trust. I feel surrender. I feel peace. I feel calm. And I move into a silent space of just continually letting go into love, into love. I lift up my star of heartfelt courage. The divine love in my heart is that courage. My heart is full, and I am grateful. And I move into my world with a renewed sense of purpose and peace, joy and love. I have the courage to do what is mine to do, and I let everything else go. I let go into love, and I detach and disengage and disentangle from everything else. I release and I let go. And so it is. It's time for us to bless our offerings. And what we're doing right here, right now, is we're placing our trust into our gift and we're receiving abundantly. I place my trust into my gift and I receive abundantly. Together, I place my trust into my gift and I receive abundantly and silently. And again aloud together. I place my trust into my gift and I receive abundantly, and so it is. Amen.